This week's talk is about the conference that was on a week and a half ago, Unsilenced. It was called Summit, Middle New Zealand on Ideology. And in its blurb, it says, "This summit is for New Zealanders who want the government to stop gender indoctrination and medicalization of our children." And we read that, we thought, that is what we do and have been doing for several years. In our Turfy Fridays, we go to the next local town and we have placards and we talk to the public about exactly that, how to stop gender indoctrination and medicalization of children and more. We talk about other things as well. And many a time, Christians come up to us, want to talk about all sorts of things from a Christian perspective. And when we went to this Unsilenced conference, we saw that it was opened with a prayer.
And we pray, "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come."
Some of the speakers were Christian and presented from a Christian viewpoint. And we thought this would be an interesting talk to have. Can lesbians, radical feminist lesbians, work with Christians? Should we work with Christians? Do Christians want to work with us? How would that look? And that's what our little talk today is about. I'm European, I'm German. My culture is steeped in Christianity. Both sides of my family, my father's side and my mother's side, are steeped in Catholicism. I grew up with that, although my family wasn't deeply religious. My culture is deeply religious, and there is no way I can even imagine myself out of that. This is not possible.
But you often talk to me about it's a cultural thing, and that it's morphed from older religions, and you see that in Germany, where they have all these old rites that actually Christianity took over in them.
Yes.
And morphed into their own version of it.
That would actually
Female
be
element.
a very interesting thing to talk about one day, about the Christian religions have morphed into Christianity in the area where I come from. There's heaps of monuments, because the Romans were there, where, they founded my hometown 2,000 years ago, or not, or even longer. It was a garrison, and they documented what they found there when they came there. So there's heaps of testimony that there was an older religion, that the Romans, they were quite tolerant in many ways.
Oh, they took on everybody else as well. They just put it in the basket.
Yes.
Why not?
Yep, let's have it.
Yeah.
And that would be interesting to talk about one day. But that's not our thing today. But just by way of explaining why we're even talking about can Christians and lesbians work together.
Radical lesbians.
Radical feminist lesbians. For me, not a problem whatsoever, because I come from a Christian background. I'm steeped in Christianity. I can't help it. That's the way the cookie crumbles with me.
Well, my background was quite different. I had a mix. My father was Catholic and my mother was Protestant. The Irish, they had the two mixed up often. But my mother was never christened. She was.
Okay.
She would be, I suppose, classical heathen. She was never christened, and she was never christened as an adult. And none of her siblings were. They got christened in their later years, I believe, and one was a born again Christian actually. And so I said to her, why did you christen us? And she said, well, it was the fashion. And so we were christened, and
It was the
on my
fashion.
father's side, that his mother wanted the boys, Catholic, and we were just shoved into the Protestant side. My mother was very spiritual too, but she didn't need to have a name to it, and she would get up early in her old age and turn on the TV to hear the prayers on the Sunday. So my upbringing was very different, and then we were just shoved off to the boys to the Bible class, and my sister and I to the proddy side, and it was just to get rid of us, get them out of the house. And then they discovered the beach, so that was thrown away, and we would just all go to the beach for the day, take a big picnic. The kids went hunting for all the bottles to make money.
Oh, yeah.
That's how the beaches were cleaned up. So I didn't have that religious background at all. I don't see myself as a Christian at all, and but I don't believe in a supernatural being controlling us all, or a creator. And if there is a creator, it has to be female. Only females create.
Naturally.
Of course.
And is anybody here from Morrinsville? Morrinsville, bro. Because Morrinsville is where this whole problem started.
Yeah, John Money.
John Money.
John Money.
John Money started gender ideology, and he
Yeah.
came from Morrinsville.
The gender ideology is not something that is sort of imported, like it's often portrayed. It's actually a homegrown thing, isn't it?
There's a lot. That's what was quite good going to this conference, to be, even though much of what was said there that we'd come across before and we were aware of it, it's good to be reminded of things that we'd forgotten.
Yeah.
And that the original term transgender was actually coined by John Money, who was a New Zealander and went to America and started doing all his research over there. He was infamously known for his terrible experiments on a couple of boys. And then we have the import of other things that, well, it wasn't imported. We were reminded that a lot of the policies that had been put through by the previous government, Labor government, were all pushed through without public knowledge. And we're giving
public knowledge and input.
Yeah, because the public weren't given a time to say whether they approved of it or not. And they actually pushed the transgender rights, actually, and their extra rights override the rights of lesbians, of women, and the general people's rights. They get extra special rights, and we, have to be reminded that it was that government under Jacinda Ardern that pushed through the two terrible laws of the sex self-ID and the conversion practices bill that put the word gender in there.
Yes.
And so this was all done by this previous government, and there needs to be reminded that these are the things that need to be changed.
Yes.
And repealed. The other thing about it not being homegrown is that one of our own from the lesbian community came back from the States, Judith Byrne, who brought a lot of this transgender rism with her. She subsequently went through the operations and stuff and started calling herself a man and is known as Jack now. But her name is on pretty much all the policies, all the things that were pushed through at the beginning for transgender have her name on it. And she's a member of PATHA. And PATHA was talked about by Mia Hughes on her Zoom.
She was coming in via video link.
Which is the satellite group to WPATH. And
one of them.
For New Zealand. That's our New Zealand version is called PATHA. And I remember seeing a couple of years ago policies that PATHA were putting through proposals demanding when Andrew Little was Minister of Health, demanding that doctors be retrained so that they could accommodate the transgender people coming through. And they've already got that now. So we have all this that's been happening here in New Zealand. And I don't think that we can blame people from overseas really for that, because we've developed all that ourselves. And unfortunately it's gone into Māori culture. You see on Māori TV, trans is everywhere.
Rainbows,
the rainbow, the queering of everything. And that's not our issue to take up on, but it just seems really weird that it's been embraced so much and pushed along by ones like Elizabeth Kerekere when she was an MP in the Greens, I think she was, or Labour.
Yeah, no, she was a Green
in the Greens, and try to justify all this with a thesis.
Yes.
On it all. And it was good to be reminded that all this stuff we have here.
Yes.
We managed to do it ourselves. Good old New Zealand.
Many groups were talking about it, how
Most
it impacts
of the lesbians I've talked to have a real deep distrust of Christian groups.
I would say rightfully so, because there is a proud history of putting lesbians down and gay men as well. Here in New Zealand, I've heard pretty hard stories. I mean, I didn't grow up here, but I heard stuff that made my blood curdle.
Well, a lot of the things I've learnt through feminism is the woman's history of European history I'm talking about here. We know about the burning times, the mass hysteria of killing off women, and it was done under the name of the Christian God. What I find interesting is that it's never talked about. And then we come into, I know what it was like in my early days coming out. It wasn't just Christians who were anti-lesbian. It was a nice broad range of people, because that was the climate at the time. And
when was that?
I came out because I was in the Navy at the time, and it was in Auckland. But
when?
Oh, that was about 1971, something like that.
Okay.
But that was my first relationship. I had a couple of years of not daring to do anything because of events that had happened to me privately. So I'm not going to go into that here, though. We don't have the time. I now realise that the word lesbian is a political word. I was told that by somebody, and I thought, oh, that's pretty awful. But I realise it is a political word, because it's the only word that pertains to woman-only sexuality, except for the word dyke. All the other words can, like gay, queer,
homosexual,
homosexual, could be a male or a female, but lesbian is woman only, and I suspect that's why the public never liked it. I think it's a lovely word, lesbian, and it wasn't even used when they began gay liberation. It was only gay liberation, and the lesbian the L came later, and all the other alphabet. And then we come into, we still didn't have any laws protecting us, but we were not criminalised like the men were. So the 1986 homosexual law reform bill was to decriminalise men. I think there was something else thrown in there which I've forgotten. And it was really supported by lesbians. The 1986 law reform bill was actually quite a nasty time. There was the build up to it, and then there were the meetings. At that time, I was working for a depot on a council in the South Island, and on the council chambers, we had to go and pay your bills. They had the petition.
Oh, which
that
petition?
Was set up by the Salvation Army.
Okay.
And they maintained they were going to petition every house, take the petition to every house in New Zealand, which wasn't true, because I was waiting at my place with my dogs. I was just waiting for them to turn up.
Oh, God.
But they didn't come. But they went to my parents' home, people I knew.
What was it the petition about?
The petition was against the bill going through.
Against
homosexual bill, legalising male
homosexuality.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So they okay. So going back to working in the council was that I knew that if I did anything about this petition, I would lose my job, because in those days we had no protection for employment or accommodation. I was renting a place and working for the council, and I wasn't brave enough to actually do something about it. I did know of a woman, I don't know if what had happened to her though, a lesbian who grabbed a petition in a pub in Amberley, ripped it up, and for that she was stabbed by a man in the pub. Now, I don't know what happened. I don't even think it made the newspapers. And I don't think she wasn't fatally hurt, but that was the kind of threats. And I remember very clearly the hatred towards lesbians and gay men. I mean, they were just thrown out all the time, like you should have been smothered at birth, that kind of thing. Now, I know they brought in evangelicist advice from America to push the petition through the Sally Army.
Oh, okay.
I know also, I remember reading that the Sally Army in the UK publicly wouldn't support them. They said the New Zealand chapter should not be doing this. So they didn't really have the support of other Sally Armies. But it's always left a nasty taint in my throat about the Sally Army. There's never been a public apology as far as I can tell. It was a very, very nasty time. I didn't go to Wellington when the petition was actually presented to Parliament, but from the footage I've seen, and we may or may not have that, it was vile. The whole time was awful. And it's something that you don't just put aside and say, oh, well, look, we all got to get together now and fight the fight. And I think there's a good reason to have distrust, and you do not get trust or respect handed to you on a platter. You have to earn it. So I don't know if Family First were actually part of that petition at the time, because there were other Christian groups, I think, that helped them. We don't know that.
We don't know.
But it's very hard to, and this is where we need to have debates. We need to be able to talk about it and talk out about it, not just shove it under the carpet. There was one goodly Christian guy. He maintained that we should all be put on an island. I thought, yes, our island, our own island. The gay boys can go and get their own island. That would be our island. And then I thought, no, that's not going to work, because wherever you have a lot of women enjoying themselves, getting on with life, the men come in. It is a healthy thing to have a mistrust of groups that have meant you harm in the past, and it can change on a pinhead how it's going to be. You get a change of government, you get a change of ideology, and suddenly who's going to be at the bottom to be attacked? Going through that timeline of the homosexual law reform bill, then in the 90s, through the gay rights movement, the laws were put through which protected lesbians and gays from being for accommodation and for employment. As far as I was concerned, that was enough, because the protection in the law and employment, which was really important. And through that, at that very small frame of time, we had everything we needed. And people were starting to be less, they didn't give us a damn about whether we were lesbian or not. It was becoming more acceptable. When we got protection in the law, when I can actually walk freely and nobody can touch me without me saying, right, that's homophobic, I can take you to court. And then I think it was they went too far, because I think they went through to
who went
the
too
gay
far?
The gay liberation, the movement of pushing for rights, and they went for same-sex marriage for lots, not just lesbian and gays, but for the oddities. And what started to annoy me is that every freaky little fetish thing that anybody had, they got lumped in with us. And why not lump them in with somebody else? We don't want them. But that's when everything started to change, because they went for the same-sex marriage, which I didn't agree with. I didn't agree with marriage. If we want to have our own rights, we can make them up. We can make the names up for them. We don't have to appropriate others. And it was a Christian institution anyway. And that's when everything started to get worse. Yeah,
Somehow.
but going back to the same-sex marriage bill that went through, I don't know what it was called, I can't remember, but it changed everything, and it upset a lot of people, especially the
Rightfully
Christians.
so. Rightfully so.
And
Coming back to the Christian.
And it actually
theme.
upset a lot of us. I didn't like it.
No, I didn't like it either.
And I've never been to a marriage.
No.
And yeah, there was a lot of other reasons why I didn't like it. But now, what one of the things that I try and do when I talk to the Christians that come to us and talk on our Turfy Fridays is to help them see there's a difference between the LG and the T, and they mix the two together. So and that's because the harm has been done with the T coming in, doing all the demanding now that we call them a she and all the other things that go along with it. But they always stood under the umbrella of the LGB, and they know very well they can't do this on their own yet. And you know when they will be able to.
But
they
will.
will know when they're doing it on their own. That's one thing that we do have in common with the Christians, that we fight that. And so I think we need to look at what we have in common. As I said, we don't have to be best buddies, we don't have to be friends even, but we have a common goal. And this ideology it's transing the gay away with the children.
Yes.
And we do have that. But there's a lot of mistrust there. And as long as you don't address the mistrust, as long as you don't accept the fact that, yes, lesbians have every right to be mistrustful. And we need to acknowledge that and to work with that. As I said, trust and respect is not handed to you on a platter. You don't say, oh, I get it because I'm saying this and I'm doing this. No, you have to earn it. I go by what people do, not what they say. It's up now. There was just one final few little things about we actually had some guy came up ages ago on our Turfy Friday, and he said, where are all the feminists talking about this? And you said, well, we're here, aren't we? And the feminists are out there doing stuff, and the ones who aren't are probably the ones who are got the AGP friends and inviting them into our spaces.
Yep.
They've gone down the dark side. The feminists are out there plugging along, doing their bit, the old biddies like us.
I've never come across a movement,
Yeah.
where so many older women have come out, and I think this is because we are sensing an existential threat, very perceptive of us.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I think I had touched on it before, that the word lesbian is a political word. I know when somebody told me that I was a bit miffed, and then I realised, yeah, it is, because I know when I was young, we never used the word lesbian because it was the dreaded word, and the word dyke was the other one. We hid behind gay because gay was what the heterosexuals didn't mind hearing. It was gay, this, gay, that, except for the ones who didn't like the appropriation of the word gay, which was fair enough, and I suppose in a way. But so I've never liked to use the word gay, and then when I finally thought I could stop saying I was a lesbian, because who cared? Nobody cared. Now I have to go back now and shove it in their face. I will use the word lesbian all the time because it is political. This is a very political thing that we're doing to save who we are,
Yes.
as a category. And so can we? What was the question? Can radical lesbians work with Christians? Well, we certainly can fight a common enemy, and we have been doing this, and we've been doing this for quite a while.
Yes.
With other